All right, what we're doing is, I noticed when we came up here to build this building that you had a hump out here, or what we call a mound. And upon asking you the question, was there a water source around here, you informed me yes there was. And instantly we got my addiction going. I am a native artifact hunter. Been doing it for about 35 years, and I guess you could call it an addiction. When I first started, I laughed at my friends saying, y'all are crazy, it's 100 degrees, you're digging in the dirt for an Indian rock, da-da-da. And being bored, we were camping, I sat down and with a shovel just started poking. Had a hole about that big around, that deep, and went bink, bink, and pulled one up, and that was it. I started shaking, and I haven't been able to stop since. And when I'm not working, this is what I do mainly for entertainment. And it's kind of fascinating. Everybody I've ever carried gets addicted the same way once they find one, because you're picking up something, it's a piece of history, it's an artifact. It could be up to 14,000 years old that it's been laying there since another human lost it. You know, we're here in Caddo Parish. The predominant culture here that the white man encountered and ended up, you know, moving out or whatever, was the Caddoan culture, which was a big, big society. A lot of people have misconceptions about the Native Americans being savages and this, that, and the other. And you start seeing some of the things they made, how they lived, everything, and it's amazing. You'll know right then that that's a misconception. It's not true. I've got a lot of artifacts that I'm going to share with Barry here, that when you see them, you'll say, how in the heck did they make that without machinery? It's just, you know, I don't think I could do it after years of practice. But anyway, what we're doing right here is we're what I call looking for color. We're looking for any kind of yellow, red, church signs, flakes from them making arrowheads, or any kind of evidence like that, charcoal. There's a lot of iron ore here, so that kind of throws you off. But Barry has found an artifact here, and they are here. I noticed the mound, and there's a small waterway down here that occasionally runs. Here's just a little piece of petrified wood I found that could have been used in, it's what we call debitage, the leftover flakes from them making an artifact, because obviously that's not natural to here, and one that small looks like something that was knocked off of a larger chunk. Barry said he's found some pieces here which very well could have been brought up by the natives to use by their napper to make the arrowheads, knife blades, or whatnot. Now the arrowhead also is a kind of a misconception of a term. Everybody thinks what you find went on the end of an arrow, when probably 90% or more is not going to be true to be so. The arrow used in conjunction with the bow was not introduced or discovered until about 600 or 800 AD. Before that, they used what is called an atlatl, which is a throwing stick, short stick about that long, could be a stick, wood, bone, whatever, has a hook on the end of it, and they would put their spear in it. They would hold it like this, the hook being here, they would put the butt of their spear in it, have it out this way, and they would use it like that and throw it. And that would give that spear about 80% more speed and distance than a hand-thrown spear. So it's still used in Africa today, and you'll see a lot of survivalists that use it. There was actually a girl last year killed a deer in Missouri using one. She has some videos on YouTube of her killing a rabbit with one, which is quite impressive. But like I say, the bow and arrow was about 600 to 800 AD introduced here. That's what you find the smaller points, which is another misconception name they call bird points. They're smaller and narrower, a lot lighter. Those were used in conjunction with the bow and arrow, but they were used for large game as well. Everybody kind of thinks small point years ago when they were first discovered, you know, small game. But there has been DNA found on the bird points of elk, buffalo, antelope, deer, every large game in America, bear. So it is, you know, it was used on large game as well as small game. The reason it being small, once again, is to work with a bow and arrow. Anything larger and heavier would, you know, not be functional. It would cause your arrow to drop too quick. But that being said, well, we're going to look around for a little color here. If not, we don't find any. I'm going to come back with a screen and go down a little bit, look for evidence, which is flakes, or chips as we call them, which is the debitage or the leftover pieces when they were making them, and or charcoal from where they had campfires today. Now on the mounds, the mound building culture, which is very likely what this might be, the majority of your mounds just would be smaller. We call them pimple mounds. You look out through a field and you'll see hundreds of them, 30, 40, however many, depending on how big the tribe was. The smaller round ones was where the hut would be of a warrior and his squaw or whatever in kids. The larger ones you would see would be one maybe used by the napper, the guy that made the arrowheads, which usually he was someone that couldn't hunt, crippled or whatever. That's all he did, and in return they kept him in meat, the hunters did. As time progressed, though, things changed. When corn was introduced, I guess you'd say when the white man came, the natives, about 80 to 90% of what they ate, they raised. They grew corn, squash, beans, even pumpkins. There's also proven evidence they had domesticated turkeys as well. So they had basically become like a farming civilization. To give you an idea of how extensive and good they were at this, the Cahokia civilization, which was around St. Louis, Missouri, they have gone up in estimates now to, there was between 90 and 110,000 Native Americans living there permanently. There was hundreds and hundreds of mounds they built. They built the mounds here out of dirt, unlike South America, Europe and whatnot, where you see these big stone monuments. They didn't have that here, so they built them out of dirt. Case in point, pretty close to us, so you have the Poverty Point World Heritage Site over in Epes, Louisiana, which they said there was between 3,000 and 5,000 natives there, dating back, I think, about 2500 BC. They found trade items all the way from the Great Lakes copper bowls, material that was used to make arrowheads, knives, pendants, things like that, all the way from the northeast, say New York, the Carolinas especially, the mountains there, and as far as Washington State even, stuff made it this far along the trade route. It was a major trading city and route during that time period, and it was quite big. There's another chunk of petrified wood. No working on that, but that's a piece that could have been worked one day. Here's another small piece of it. And what I'm going to need to do, I can see we've got a lot of overgrowth here, is come back with a screen, a 1/4-inch screen, and we can see a lot more of what's under the ground here, whereas what the majority of what you're going to find is. And it's a real interesting thing to get into, but I'm going to warn you now, it is an addiction. I've been at this for 35 years or more, but it's probably, out of all the addictions I've ever had, the best. I wake up in the morning and I got something to show for it, you know, besides not feeling good. But it's something that if I could do it, I would do it all day, every day. I mean, you see it's out here, it's 90 degrees at least in Louisiana, and probably 90% humidity, close to 100 degrees heat in the seas, and I'm out here sweating like a Christian at an ISIS meeting or something. But it's definitely something that's amazing, because, you know, they lived here as long as current estimates are 14,000 years, but there has been a lot of debate in the archaeological community. They have found points that have predated that. It's called Solutrean. There used to be common theory the oldest thing here was the Clovis, which is very rare in Louisiana, to say the least. Probably less Clovis is found in Louisiana than anywhere else in the U.S. Probably because at that time period, most of our state was underwater. But I digress. The points they have found that predate that are what they call Solutrean, which definitely, through I guess trying to tie these in, the old theory has always been the natives came across from the Bering Strait from Asia to North America, but there's a lot of debate in that now from people that actually know what they're talking about, that it's highly likely that a lot of them came from Europe. There's in looking at the Clovis Point, they tried to find something related to it from Asia to show that they brought this technology and style with them from Asia, but during that time period, the only thing being used there was a bone handle with flakes, like the debichich that you would find inserted along a slot for a blade. The closest thing to a Clovis they found was a point from northern France, I think northwestern France, and Spain. And the theory is, which would have been very easy for them to do, they could have come across in hide boats along the ice shelf along the Atlantic and then down. And it's kind of been, I guess you'd say in my mind, solidified, because there's tons of these Clovis points, and the first Solutreans were found along the Atlantic coast, a lot in the Carolinas, Virginia area. Then they kind of disappeared for a while when another mini ice age hit, but then they came back. So that's the theory on how they got here now, but this is all, like I say, speculation. The Native Americans didn't tell the white man their history much, where they came from, how they did things. In fact, they would a lot of times tell them a crock of crap just to feed them lice. For instance, there's a theory around it that where they told the white man this is how they made arrowheads. They would heat up the rock and drip water on it, and the water hitting hot rock would cause it to chip. But that's about as far-fetched as somebody 6 years old back in the 1800s went to the moon and back. That's not how they were made. They were made with a hammerstone and or bone and or antler on the finer chipping, and they would fire a lot of materials as well, which would change their molecular structure and make them easier to make. For instance, here in Louisiana, we only have 3 natural materials here, which is, one is called creek chert or gravel, which you would be lucky to be able to make a point 2 or 3 inches long because it's not that big of a material. It has a crust on it. They would knock that off to get to the core. Then they would heat that up, which would make it a little bit more brittle and susceptible to the finer flaking along the edges and for the notches and whatnot. The only other thing we have here is petrified wood, and most of it's really crappy as far as you can only make a really crude tool, except for the petrified palm wood that you will find occasionally. That could be heat treated, and it was a pretty workable substance. It was a good substance to use, but it's a rare substance to find one in, and they're highly valued here, highly valued everywhere, but you can find them in West Louisiana and East Texas. That being said, we'll get off here for a second and see if I can find evidence or something. We'll come back and talk a little more.